What is the dumbest TV show ever made? The dumbest TV show ever made has a device that can create limitless energy in a world suffering an energy crisis, and yet it is framed as not being able to make money, forgetting the fact you'd make trillions in a world suffering an energy crisis with such a device. The show has a soldier being detained as the primary suspect in an assault on a fellow soldier, and without being cleared, they get a promotion and a return to active duty. We also have a character tracking down a man in less than a week, with nothing but a sketch of him, with no use of modern technology, and a location which is the entire state of California. This show also has someone getting kidnapped with the intent of getting information out of them, but then the kidnapper lets go the one person the victim would do anything for before asking a single question. And none of this is intended to be a joke. So what's this show I call the dumbest TV show ever? Fallout. The overwhelmingly well-received show beloved by critics, viewers, and YouTubers who should know better. Hailed as a proper adaptation of a video game property, and yet I disagree, as most of the things in the show can be explained by two things: the characters are stupid, and the plot demanded it. There are a few exceptions, but these are the primary reasons for things happening in this show. So let's begin. The introduction, where we are introduced to the movie star Cooper Howard, on the day the bombs fell, has issues right at the start. Like no one else seeing the nuclear flash except for Cooper's daughter, her not being blinded or even inconvenienced by said flash, this one chick falling to her left due to the shockwave, even though the force shown would have repelled her forward, and weirdly, no one else within the room is affected at all. Then there's that huge mushroom cloud with all the destruction that we can see, that makes me wonder if Shockwave should have done this instead. Regardless, this shouldn't be happening, as this is based on the lore from the video games, and the lore has established that the nukes were dropped at 9:47 AM in Boston. Keep in mind that this is Los Angeles, and with the 3-hour time difference, this would make it early morning, or around 6:50 AM to be precise in LA, which it clearly isn't, by look at that skyline, and this guy's watch showing the actual time. And if the daughter wasn't blinded before, she soon will be. As Cooper puts her on his horse, and instead of going down the hill, or away from the city being nuked, Cooper rides them towards the city and exposes them to not one, not two, but 3 nuclear explosions. Each flash would have blinded them, radiation would have irradiated them, and given the distance of the 3rd explosion, they should have been annihilated or cooked alive, just like that scene in Terminator 2. Go watch if you haven't seen it. There was also Cooper explaining the thumbs up he is known for to his daughter, which boils down to, if the cloud is smaller, run, and if it's bigger, give up and die. Taught to him by the Marines. I'd just run, like Cooper did, after telling his daughter not to, then taking her straight into the nuclear explosions. I guess Marines aren't what they used to be. On to Vault 33, where we are introduced to Lucy McLean, 219 years after the bombs. She's applying for blind marriage with the connected Vault 32 during their annual trade. Why? Because Lucy's unable to find a man within 33 that she isn't related to, which shows just how mismanaged and desperate this population truly is. And it gets worse, as the man Lucy sleeps with out of every man available is Chet, her cousin, which isn't even a secret, but an accepted fact by everyone in their vault.
Lucy, I love you.
We all know that, Chet.
That's fucking disgusting. Oh, throw up.
I'm starting to see how the gene pool got polluted with this incest-loving culture. Makes me wonder about the kids Lucy was teaching, as outside the classroom footage I'm showing you now, and a few of them seen at the wedding, they are never seen again. Also wonder about the parents after the previous.
Your parents related, like before they were married?
The future is not looking good. Speaking of which, after they open the door for 32, we get a conversation between Lucy's father, Overseer Hank, and 32's Overseer, named Moldova. She explains that the Vault 32 lost many of its people, including their Overseer Jackson, to starvation caused by a wheat blight.
When blight hit our wheat, we lost a lot of good people. But this trade will help us get back on our feet.
Because after 219 years, Vault 32 never thought to grow anything besides wheat. Or Vault-Tec didn't give them any alternative crops. And they clearly never considered the dangers of monocropping, or the importance of segmenting, judging by what we see later, which might explain why a single blight wiped out their entire food supply, And, of course, neither vault has food reserves of any kind. Nice to see those 219 years have been well spent. Have Vault 33's big offer to help?
As arranged, we offer you seed and parts.
I'm sure they'll be really comforting when they go back to their vault with no food tomorrow. And I've got to say, everyone's surprisingly chill about this, as Vault 33 didn't even try to move the trade forward, despite a full-on crisis happening next door with 32. I guess Hank's response was basically,
Sir, the oxygen level is bottoming out in Sector G. What do you want me to do about it?
Don't do anything.
But they won't last an hour, sir.
Fuck 'em.
and with that, 32 joins the wedding to have what is probably their last meal. I can't help but wonder if the 32s are looking at that spread thinking, you can spare food for a wedding, but not for us? How about some corn? You clearly got enough of it? No? Just,
You seed and parts.
fuck off, 33. Let's not forget this place is supposed to be under ration control. Did anyone tell Woody? Because looking at him, rationing is the last thing on his mind. You don't get a body like that just by eating corn. Do you? Woody. Perhaps we should rename him Contradiction, as that's what he is. And it won't be the last time we hear the word contradiction, I assure you. From there, Lucy gets married to a mail-order husband, Monty. Chet looks depressed about not being able to sleep with his cousin. No, I'm not joking, as the riders are sick puppies. The 32s enjoy their last meal, and Lucy and Monty leave to consummate their marriage. Once that's over, Lucy notices Monty acting strange, which includes fascination with a water faucet. Riveting stuff, which leads to Lucy rising hearing the following, which in turn makes her realize that these are not the 32s from the previous trade, but imposters from the surface. How did we notice? Lucy throws on her Pip-Boy, and the Geiger counter detects radiation that could only have come from the surface, radiating off Monty. And with the rad level sitting at around 840 out of 1,000 rads, his skin should be falling off. 1,000 rads is death, by the way. Does he look like he's suffering anything close to that? Doesn't look like it to me. Now let's go over how this infiltration should have worked. First, let's presume the intruder's leader, Lee Moldova, killed all of Vault 32 when they somehow gained entry. To cover her tracks, Lee either fabricated the famine and gradually reported casualties to Hank, who took all this in stride and didn't move up the trade to offer his arguably worthless
You seed and parts.
Then he works for Moldova to plan a wedding and throw a feast instead of addressing a famine, as the policy of Hank might as well be.
Fuck 'em.
Or Lee offered no subtlety and just told Hank, "Hi, we had a famine and half the vault is dead. We still on for that trade?" If Hank wasn't an idiot, and was actually a well-written character, he'd ask questions like, "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Who's dead? And who's alive?" With the gradual casualty reports, he'd quickly realize that everyone who could replace their overseer is dead. He also would have learned that anyone he ever knew in 32 is also dead, which would eventually lead him to asking, who the hell is Lee Moldova? Because her name isn't an alias from one of the 32s. It's her real name.
I take it you know who she is?
Everyone knows who Moldaver is.
Which means they only got him because Hank is an idiot, and so is all the 33. As none of them realized Lee Moldova was a fake name, and nor did they notice that they hadn't met any of these people from the previous trades. And whether it be through observation or during their conversations, they should have noticed something, as I imagine these people are applying the same level of guile as Moldova, and using their real names as well. If only someone had asked a question, they could have avoided,
So what's your sperm count? Sperm is pretty important in perpetuating America, so...
I love it that the writers knew if they continued here that the jig would have been up. And instead of rewriting it, they have Harper contradicting herself by ending it, even though she clearly wanted to hear what Monty would say, but the plot said otherwise. There are also the Pip-Boys not detecting the radiation until now. Lucy gets a pass, as hers wasn't even on until she put it on in her home, but Monty's was on, and so was Moldova's, same with Norm's, the priest's, Hank's, and Betty's. I imagine the argument will be sabotage, or that they turned off the Geiger counters, even though there has been no case of being able to do that without the whole device being non-functional in Fallout's history. It'd be like turning off a smoke alarm to not be disturbed by it. I'm sure nothing bad will happen. Hope it was worth it, 33. Now for Lucy to experience the joys of marriage. which is one of the better action scenes in this show. Probably even better than the one fight everyone claims is the best. But I'll deal with that later. Lucy hitting him in the head with the pit boy and following with a kick was nice. When he's got her pinned on the cabinet, it looks more like an actress tapping to be let up, instead of a character escaping a killer's clutches. The slap to the balls was effective, even though he could have stabbed her as she ran away. The roll was smooth, but I doubt the outcome it created, and even though she took her fair share of knocks, there still feels like plot protection even after he stabs her. Because if he hadn't let her up, she'd be dead, and if he got in prison style instead of hovering over for the next 22 seconds, she'd definitely be dead. But she isn't, as the plot demands it. Thank God for bright lights, easily distracted, dull reactions, and beer mugs. Or she would have been dead again. Lucy patches up a stab wound with Stimpack, which is a healing item from the games, which will become yet another contradiction in this show. I assume it stops the bleeding and repairs any internal damage. Otherwise she'd be pooling blood. But later, she's stapling herself up anyway. But then in the next episode, a Stimpack basically resurrects a dog with no follow-up treatment. I guess it does whatever the plot needs it to. Lucy leaves her home, and we get the answer to the question I had while watching this. If they had guns, why'd they wait to use them? Answer: they didn't have any guns. They stole them from 33's armory. And somehow it got past its lock. Or worse, it was unlocked. Or it was like Lucy's door that only needed the press of a button to open. Makes you wonder why they even have an armory if it's so easy to access. You could argue it's a sign of a high-trust society, but if that's the case, why not let everyone have and be responsible for their own firearms? As that would eliminate the need for a redundant armory, and it certainly would have avoided the intruders looting all of their weapons. And wouldn't Vault 32 also have an armory? From what I've seen, the two vaults share the exact same layout, so why didn't they loot 32's weapons and come in blasting like they are now? Because just like everything else in this show, nothing happens without contrivance and characters being stupid. Lucy then loots the armory of a tranquilizer gun and darts, as that's all that was left. On the way to the second floor balcony overlooking the courtyard, she tranks an intruder and witnesses the ongoing massacre of the 33s. During this, one intruder called Cake Eater fires his gun in the air, staying just below Lucy and setting her in the line of sight. Funny how Cake Eater doesn't see her shoot her like he did in the other fellow he shot a second before Lucy arrived. She's looking straight at him and doesn't shoot the only intruder with a gun that could be seen, which would have been useful. You could argue the range of the weapon wasn't suitable, but she goes down the stairs where it would be, and still doesn't fire. Instead, she looks in his direction, looks away again, shoots the intruder behind her, turns and finally spots the guy that's been in the same area since the descent down the stairs. Which makes me ask the following.
What, are you retarded?
And the choreography during the massacre is a mess. If the intruders already have the guns, and the goal is slaughter, then this massacre should already be over. You could argue that the intruders are playing with their victims instead of just finishing them off, or they are taking hostages because of what happens later, but there's no sign of that either. No one's corralling people, and no one's keeping them contained. And if you're going to argue Cake Eater was contained in this area because he's standing in the path to the courtyard, remember this guy? He was unarmed. Shot by Cake Eater, and it looks like Lucy wasn't the only one giving Cake Eater a pass, as this chick has a gun and doesn't fire a shot. Instead, she crawls into view here without firing at anyone, before the plot gets her out of view to hide the obvious stupidity of not firing. Now for some stupidity the show left right out in the open. Lucy's saved by the plot in the form of a vault denizen who kicks the gun away, punches Cake Eater, and then, instead of pressing the advantage, runs off to tackle a fellow female 33 denizen, only to change his mind as she tackles an armed intruder with a cleaver, which leads to Cake Eater getting sliced while our hero just waves his hands around, watching as Cake Eater gets back up. Cake Eater then arches backwards in pain while firing into the air, and somehow turns to hit his ally he wasn't even facing. Because he couldn't have shot them all, I guess the plot simply demanded they die. And die they did. Along with the guy that was behind Lucy who had a gun and didn't use it on her. How convenient. Bad directing? Maybe. Either way, Lucy is dumb because she didn't pick up Cake Eater's gun. Meanwhile, Lucy's friend Harper is shown to be in the courtyard right behind Lucy, wrestling with an intruder in rage over her husband's death. This could have been a cool moment, but Harper didn't take the gun for the intruder. It was teleported to her. As you can see, no gun in this frame, then magically, gun. No gun, then gun. And to make it worse, he had her dead to rights after stabbing her with that fork. But plot protection isn't exclusive to Lucy, people. Lucy says her brother Nons is about to be stabbed in the courtyard. We can also see that this was where Harper would have been seconds ago, yet she's mysteriously vanished. The distance between where Lucy was and where she ends up is only a few feet, but somehow, it's enough for Harper to disappear. Maybe that scene was meant to happen earlier, but as it's shown, this is what it looks like. Lucy hides Norm as apparently his massacre and plot have no use for an uninjured adult male, even though they are clearly losing. Speaking of which, one frame from here, and suddenly security is pacifying the intruders in the background. Now ask yourself, where were these guys before? Since Fallout 3, every vault with a living population has had some form of security personnel. The answer? They didn't exist until now. Because if they did, this would have been yet another reason why the massacre shouldn't have happened, as a bunch of armed security would have made a huge difference against the intruders who were too stupid to bring the guns from the vault they just slaughtered. It makes you wonder how they even managed to kill 32 if they had no guns. Because if they did have them, why sneak in when all they intended was slaughter? I'm sure the answer will be really satisfying. As for security, the plot needed them to not exist so the massacre could happen. Now the plot needs them to show up to solve the problem they created. Logic and reason be damned. And a hell of a job they're doing, as Lucy's husband must have walked right past them to try and complete his original divorce attempt. I guess they don't exist again, or he would have been detained as an intruder or as an injured denizen. This does give Hank the opportunity to win Father of the Year as he saves her via a shovel and disposes his prick via the pickle barrel. Following that, Hank gets an alert in his Pip-Boy stating inner vault door breached. And since it's left to interpretation due to the writer's lack of clarity, I'll say it's the door in the 33's opened to let in Moldova and her ilk, because they are dumb. If that's the door in question, it can't be the one being breached, as we saw Norm walk into Vault 32 before the slaughter began, which means that the door is still open. Unless the writers meant the door that I call the connecting tunnel door that leads to the intervault door, as that one was sealed when the big intruder nearly killed Chet, while carrying a security officer that spawned in too early over his shoulder. Probably was an attempt to justify the spontaneous hostages right around the corner. The confrontation ended with the big guy getting cut down the middle, sealing that door, and covering Chet in another man's fluids. At least it's not incest. And even if the tunnel door is the door in question, it still wouldn't matter, because this alert can only be telling Hank a couple of things. Either more intruders are breaking in for 32, or they are breaking out to escape back to 32 because the plot said they lost all of a sudden. Neither scenario makes sense, and neither does Hank's or Lucy's chosen response, which is to run straight to the intervault door without gathering weapons, or the security forces that have been reduced to this guy here that they ignore. What a shame. Those guys could have made a real difference to what happens next. And if they have these sensors for the internal doors, why don't they have them for the external vault doors? You know, the ones that open to the wasteland to serve as the foundation for any invasion, the same doors that these intruders would have had to have breached to get inside. Too bad there are no sensors on those doors, otherwise I feel something other than the scathing contempt I have for the people who praise this pile of shit, and the massacre wouldn't have happened. Yet again. Regardless, Lucy seems content running to her death with Hank, but at least she starts to pick up the weapon in the courtyard, which is her trank gun, the one the writers forgot she still had when she left the courtyard. Anyway, Hank arrives at the intervault door finding a bunch of hostages on their knees, including Chet and Harper, with a bomb blinking behind them. Then Lucy shows up, and Lee reveals that she's got a detonator, and a crowd of armed intruders surround them both. Now for the obvious question. How the fuck did everyone get here? If we're going by how the show chooses to show this to us, we saw Lee Moldova while Lucy was on the balcony not seeing Cake Eater, through Woody, or the man I called Contradiction because he got fat while rationing. We see him run away to what would have been one floor below Lucy, and that is where we see Lee Moldova walking down a corridor that would have been behind Lucy. And with Harper disappearing just before Lucy reaches Norm, that means Moldova and her entourage that we saw walking down the corridor managed to grab Harper while Lucy was standing in front of the entrance to the courtyard without being seen, get through that same courtyard while dragging Harper and still not getting seen, picking up Chet while dragging Harper and other hostages as we didn't see them getting gathered, or someone else grabbed Harper before Lucy even got there and somehow rounded up the other hostages off screen, while grabbing Chet on the way to the intervault door and just waited for Moldova, which means Moldova and her entourage managed to not only not get seen by Lucy and Norm as they would have had to have passed through the courtyard to get to the hostages, but also managed to not get caught by security that would have had to have spawned from where Lee was. Do you see how ridiculous this show is? There's some dialogue suggesting that Hank and Lee already know each other, followed by Lee giving Hank a choice, the hostages or Lucy. Hank chooses his daughter over the 7 lives on the line, which includes Harper's baby, without even asking Lucy what she wanted because...
Fuck him.
Good old Hank. And Lucy offers all the concern and moral insight of her father for her fellow dwellers by saying,
Hey, stop! Dad, we have to stop!
just like dear old Dad.
Fuck him.
Hank apparently confirms the deal by shoving Lucy into a side storage room and locking her in it. Not sure how that works, but okay. Then Hank is shot in the back with train darts to knock him out so Lee can take him with her. And this is where Lee is revealed to be either stupid, evil, or both. Because her grand plan was to infiltrate the vault, start a massacre, grab some hostages, bait Hank with a signal he may or may not follow, just to get him back to the interval door where he was already standing when she entered 33 to take him away. She could have taken him as soon as she walked in. No one had any weapons, and security didn't exist yet. All she had to do was walk in since she arranged a meeting with Hank, use the knives they had hidden in their jumpsuits, grab Hank, walk out, detonate the bomb, and done. But instead, she lost most of her people during this attack, even though it was done by plot contrivance, and killed probably half of 33 and all of 32, and that is why Lee's evil, stupid, or both. Speaking of being stupid and evil, Lee doesn't even try to get any of her people back even though she has the means to do so with her hostages, but I guess all the leaders follow the philosophy of Hank.
Fuck him.
She also leaves Lucy behind even though we later see she took Hank with the intention of getting information out of him, yet she leaves behind the one person who he just traded 7 lives for and doesn't think to use it to get the information she wants. Why? Because the writers want Lucy to go on a Save the Dad quest and nothing in this show can happen when her characters are smart. That's how you know the writing is really good. Lee mocks Lucy over taking her dad because she's such a nice person, and even confirms she knew her mother. And if anyone wants to suggest that she left Lucy behind because the writers have the unearned audacity to let her claim she cares about her, first. Second, she just killed half the people that Lucy grew up with and handed her over to get married to a man who tried to kill her. Twice. She's probably traumatized for life, and I thought Lucy had plot protection throughout this massacre, but she's got nothing on Hank, as he didn't even exist until he was spawned in to save Lucy from her husband. Don't believe me? Tell me where he was during this massacre, and find those kids from the classroom wedding while you're at it, so I'm sure they weren't just forgotten about. Not at all. They take Hank and Lee. Bored of mocking Lucy, Lee decides it's time to torment the hostages, so she makes them run for their lives, which includes a fully pregnant Harper. Wait, what?
So I'm gonna offer you a choice. Them or her.
What was the point of that? If that was to show Lucy that Hank is willing to throw people's lives away, then say the point flew over her head, just like the irony flew over Lee's. The writers really will insist that this woman's a hero by the time the show's over, by the way. Lee ends her brilliant plan by detonating the bomb to destroy the interval door, to stop them from following her, forgetting the fact that the vault denizens had even a moment of thought. They could have just sent the security teams, assuming they ever respawned, through their own external door to intercept them as they exited Vault 32's. But I doubt the writers even considered that as an option. Just like Lee didn't consider the fact that even though Lucy is behind the door, she's still standing near a very powerful explosive. And because the other dwellers just watch father and daughter and not give a single thought to their welfare, they decide to return the favour. So Chet becomes the most moral character in the show as he helps Harper up and leaves Lucy behind. Yes, our degenerate cousin fucker is winning the game of morality. That's how low the bar is in this show. With no one stopping to let Lucy out and no display of intelligence or understanding of the situation, she stands there and survives this with her face right up against the glass. She'll survive that with no new injuries because the plot demands it. That concludes the first part of Lucy's story. Now on to our second main character, Maximus. The character is so stupid, with a story so implausible, One of the most viewed videos of him is about him stating that he has the idiot savant perk from Fallout 4. If that were true, and was meant as an attempt to explain all the insane shit that he gets away with, it wouldn't work. As all the perk does is give the bearer random experience points for certain actions. It doesn't make them immune for the consequences of their own stupidity, like this walking turd apparently is. He's also a cadet in the Brotherhood of Steel. You know the Brotherhood of Steel? Or the BOS from the games? That strict isolationist tech-hoarding faction that is known for being disciplined, competent, and fiercely loyal to those who they call brother or sister? So how is the show introduced to BOS and Maximus? By opening with Maximus getting the shit kicked out of him by 6 of his fellow cadets, who all scatter the second a BOS officer turns the corner, only for said officer to do absolutely nothing about a group assault happening right in front of him. What a great start. We are also introduced to Dane, another cadet and apparently Maximus' only friend. Dane is a woman who insists she's a man, a detail the writers make sure to weave into this mess later, regardless of the fact the real Brotherhood is a faction of hard science that wouldn't tolerate her delusions. And speaking of delusions, how is BOS even here? As this is California, and unfortunately, the show is canon to the games. The last time we saw the BOS is in New Vegas in 2281, and there were very few left after their war with the NCR. The faction that drove them out of California. They can't be here, they shouldn't be here, but here they are. Because just like a certain character, somehow the Brotherhood returned. And this guy's line.
It is the duty of the Brotherhood of Steel to secure the wasteland.
No, it isn't. The Brotherhood's purpose is to secure knowledge and technology to keep them out of the hands of those they consider unworthy. They believe that unchecked technology is what caused the end of the world. There's nothing about securing the wasteland for themselves. We also see that Maximus isn't exactly smart.
Can you identify this relic?
Rotor?
A circuit.
Bit excessive, but after what we just saw them allow, I shouldn't be surprised. And to really complete the image of discipline and knowledge the Brotherhood is supposedly known for, there are 2 kids smoking outside with no consequences. And I gotta wonder why this Brotherhood name only is not in the bunker like the actual Brotherhood of Steel, and they're just out in the open what looks to me to be not a very well fortified camp. Especially since they'd be right next to the NCR. Makes you wonder why the NCR hasn't already shown up and finished a job that was practically done 15 years ago in New Vegas. I'm sure the writers have a perfectly reasonable explanation, one that definitely won't feel like they're pissing in the faces of fans who appreciate the games that were actually well written. I mean, it's not like the writers have actually erased the NCR, which would kill the legacy of Fallout 1 and 2, forgotten about the Legion, and written in the fake Brotherhood as a stand-in for the real Brotherhood of Steel, just so Bethesda can drag their Brotherhood from 3 and 4 all the way from the other side of the country to take over the setting of the original games out of spite. Not even Bethesda would be that... Wait. Is that the Primmon from Fallout 4?
Son of a bitch!
I see Bethesda is taking notes from Disney.
Let the past die. Kill it, if you have to.
Worked out real well for them, didn't it? And honestly, it's quite fitting, as Disney Star Wars had that pile of shit everyone liked until everyone slowly realised that they were wrong with the next installments. They say history repeats itself. I guess we'll see. We also see no punishment for the cadets walking out without permission to ogle the Primwin in that ill-fitted T-60 helmet. Then we get the same thing with Maximus and Dane as they walk away from their post to get a close look at the power armor in an area that they were not supposed to be in. And when they are caught trespassing, nothing happens. Not even a stern talking to, as discipline is a myth in this Brotherhood in name only. We also shown that Maximus was saved by his Brotherhood and spies to be promoted to get his hands on power armor. Too bad not being able to tell the difference between a rotor and circuit doesn't put you high on the list of potential candidates. He gets massively disappointed when he finds out several of his fellow cadets were promoted over him, including Dane. And I just want to remind you that these people are supposed to be trained from childhood or the late teens ideally. These people look like they've been through years of strict combat training and rationing. These skinny, fat, out-of-shape recruits. How do you even get fat in the wasteland while supposedly living under a strict regime? I thought Woody was the king of contradictions, by getting obese in a vault. But these people managed it out in the wasteland where food is meant to be a luxury. I think we found a you kings and queens of things that make no sense. After Maximus' process is used, he continues to represent the Brotherhood in name only by throwing a tantrum and breaking the handle of some kind of toilet. The Brotherhood is Steel, ladies and gentlemen. Some defendants claim his childless meltdown was about Dane getting promoted because she'd be leaving on a mission, but we'll get to that soon. The next day, Dane wakes up screaming from a razor blade in her boot. She must have really stomped that thing to get it to cut that high. An officer immediately seizes Maximus for interrogation, as apparently everyone assumes he did it. Gee, I wonder why. Too bad they weren't this decisive when those same cadets jumped Maximus earlier. And the cherry on top, this is the same officer who didn't arrest anyone who attacked Maximus. What the fuck? He's brought before the elder and interrogated, accused of hurting Dane. He denies it, but then he says this to the elder interrogator.
Your fellow aspirants say it was you.
I wanted it to happen. Is that wrong?
So much for his fit being about Dane leaving. What a prick. And before that, the elder also dropped this gem.
I understand you're a friend of aspirant Dane. You're aware of their injury.
Don't remember gender confusion being part of Fallout lore. Not at all inconsistent and damaging to the established universe. And people think that this is a perfect adaptation? Early in the scene when Maximus was asked why he joined, he says this.
To hurt the people who hurt me?
And that's not a reason the actual Brotherhood would accept, as that would mean he doesn't care about their ideals, only himself, and not his brothers or sisters. Further shown by him saying,
I wanted it to happen. Is that wrong?
Another of our show's heroes, ladies and gentlemen. The show never actually tells us if he's guilty here, but from what he says, it looks like he did it. And even if he didn't, he's such a catastrophically stupid piece of shit that he says everything that makes him look guilty. And honestly, I think he is in the mental impairment category.
I'm kind of retarded.
And no, I'm not joking. You can play as a total idiot and still finish the story in the Fallout games. But at least it gains knowledge and build limits around that circumstance. Maximus, on the other hand, is treated like what he clearly isn't, competent and decent, when he's clearly anything but. The elder also says this.
Violence against a brother of steel is a sign of weakness.
Sounds great until you remember the six that attacked Maximus, and the fact the elder said this to Maximus after his denial.
Why not? Your friend was promoted, you were not. You have ambitions, don't you?
I'm getting some real mixed messages here from this fake brotherhood. Asked to give a defense, Maximus gives a big speech praising the elder and declaring he wants to serve and die for the brotherhood, only doing this after it seems he will be condemned to execution. How convenient and not at all a lie. The elder fortunately remembers what he said less than 3 minutes ago about Dane, and how Maximus didn't join for their ideals, makes the only choice that is befitting of Maximus. He promotes him.
What?
To Dane's position.
What the fuck?
So not only has the elder given Maximus the position of the person he supposedly assaulted, he's also just told everyone he can get someone's position by assaulting them. All the while not providing a culprit to the crime and annoying everyone's concerns, as most people believe he did this. How will this affect the Brotherhood going forward? Well, the writers didn't think about that, so clearly neither should you. Get more quality writing as Dane tells Maximus that it's nice to be in hospitals since no one steals your food there. Further highlighting the fact these are a bunch of undisciplined thugs and not the soldiers and knights that they pretend to be. We also see cadets bullying a child cadet out in the open, with no fear of punishment, because what's Brotherhood anyway? Dane also says she stood up for Maximus, telling us he wouldn't hurt a fly. First off, if only she knew what he said during the interrogation.
I wanted it to happen. Is that wrong?
And second, never hurt a fly isn't exactly high praise in any organization that requires violence. We see this Brotherhood doing dumb pagan rituals that never existed within the actual Brotherhood, or has this been confused with the 40k universe, which is another franchise that Amazon will no doubt help ruin soon. Then the elder gives a speech that would confuse you and old fans alike.
Comes from the highest clerics in the Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth, or Boston, is where the Privilege and these orders are coming from. That's nearly 3,000 miles away on the other side of America. Reminder that we are in California, supposedly near LA. And the speech gets interesting when he said, a denizen of the Enclave has escaped. The Enclave isn't a place, it's a faction, and one that is hell-bent on killing everything that isn't them. The Brotherhood forces from the Privilege in Boston who fought the Enclave would know this. But honestly, I think when the writers wrote that line, they generally thought the Enclave was a location. And the speech tells us that this brother has known where the Enclave has been for some time. Yet their response then and now is to do absolutely nothing about them. Because the writers don't know what they are doing. And speaking of the writers not knowing what they are doing, our denizens somehow escaped the Enclave, which will be covered in the next episode. And where was this escape from? Fuck knows. The only clue we get is these snowy mountains I'm showing you now. Then apparently, somehow, the Brotherhood in Boston found out, which means one of their people must have seen him in person, but for whatever reason, they didn't grab him right then and there. Instead, the intel somehow travelled all the way to Boston from the other side of the country, leading to the Primwin being prepped, which would have taken at least a day or two, then flown across America in another 2 or 3 days, assuming that they're going to get shot down and caught in a storm like the Action Brotherhood did in Tactics.
Down and assess the extent of the remaining super mutant threat. But disaster struck while crossing the Great Mountains.
Yet somehow, they arrive with the intel that's still relevant after several days to tell this Brotherhood that he's wearing a bow, glasses, traveling with a dog, now he's heading to California. But not where in California. And not to use those communications that would have been used to contact Boston in the first place, because God forbid, the Rise make this too ridiculous. The Brotherhood from Boston somehow knows the Danson has an item of great power, even though it's not exactly out in the open to be spotted. They know he has it. Too bad they don't know what it looks like, or even where he's keeping it, because if they do know, they're sure as hell not sharing it during this briefing. Their grand plan, because they know everything except where he's going, otherwise the show would have ended an episode early, is to send out 5 powered armored knights and 5 squires in pairs to search the vaguely defined wilds, because that's all they could spare, in the blind hope they'll just bump into him. The target is 60-something, travelling on foot, could have only gone so far in the days since his escape. The Brotherhood would have to know where he escaped from and that he's heading to California. They should be easily able to calculate his possible paths and be able to take the Primwin past the camp to deploy scouts, set up checkpoints, and intercept him with their vertibirds, instead of wasting a day resting and picking up 5 squires they didn't need when they already have men in bunks aboard the Primwin. Just run shifts and keep moving. But no. A day wasted for 5 squires they didn't need, who've never seen combat, assigned to retrieve something only described as
with him an object of profound potential.
with only 10 people in pairs to search the wasteland because this guy's in charge of distribution.
3 men. That's all I can spare.
This plan is so inefficient it borders on parody. And why is this the case? Because fuck logic and good planning, you can't get 8 episodes otherwise. The briefing wraps up, Maximus receives the intel I mentioned before, and off they go. Where we then learn that a squire is nothing more than a walking joke, and a nod to the games about making your companions carry ridiculous amounts of shit, which makes the squire nothing but a disrespected liability in combat, and within this show. How smart and Brotherhood-like this so-called Brotherhood is. You might think this is some kind of punishment for Maximus, but no. The other 4 are getting the exact same treatment, which further highlights the stupidity and means the Elder really bought Maximus's bullshit story, and that Maximus could very well be the culprit of the crime that they are sending out in the field, alone with one of their own, who has something he wants. I'm sure nothing bad will happen. With that, Maximus flies off in the vertibird with Knight Titus in Dane's position, leaving behind this disgrace of a Brotherhood, for now. And while editing this, I realised that the Primwin has vanished. I guess all the resources boiled down to 5 Knights of 5 vertibirds. Even though the Primwin was shown to have the capacity to hold enough men and resources for an expedition force in Fallout 4. Did it go back to Boston? I don't think so, as it's present in the last episode, and I doubt it would have been able to make it back to Boston and return in the 4 to 5 days as plot lasts. God, I hate this show.